Welcome back to the BlogHubPoint YouTube channel. In this video, we're going to learn how to use the transform property. This property lets you transform your HTML elements and text into stunning 2D or 3D effects. There are several different functions you can use with the transform property to create these visual effects. Let's dive in and see how it works. First, create a div with the class container. Inside this container div, create another div with the class box. Then, inside the box div, write the text "Welcome" in BlogHubPoint. Next, go to your style.css file. Start by styling the container class. Set the height to 800px. Then, add the border property with a value of 10px solid gray. Now, when you view it in the browser, you'll see the container box with a gray border. Next, add the margin property with a value of 10px and the padding property with a value of 10px. Now let's style the box class. Set the height to 200px and the width to 200px. Then set the background color to bisque. After that, set the font size property to 36px and the color property to gray. Finally, when you check the browser, you'll see the box inside the container. Now we apply the transform property. For example, to move the box horizontally, we use the translateX function inside the box class and set it to 200px. On a small screen, the box will appear shifted to the right, but on a larger screen, you'll see a 200px space where the box would be. To move the box vertically, we use TranslateY, which moves the box from the top to the bottom. If we try using TranslateZ, though, there's no visible change. This is because TranslateZ is for 3D effects, and we need to apply the perspective property to the parent container. When we set the perspective to 600px, the box appears partly outside the container, as if it's closer to you. But if you set perspective to -1200 pixel, the box stays within the container in its original position. Finally, adjusting the perspective from a negative to a positive value will change how the box looks in 3D space. We can also use multiple translate values together. For example, we can change the horizontal position using TranslateX and combine it with TranslateZ, setting the value to 300px. When you do this, the box will shift to the right. If you swap TranslateX with TranslateY, the box will move downward instead. Now, if we add the TranslateX property and set it to 400px, you'll see the effect of the box moving horizontally and vertically. We can also use the shorthand property translate to combine TranslateX and TranslateY. For instance, setting translate to 200px for horizontal and 400px for vertical will move the box both horizontally and vertically at the same time. When you use a single translate value, it takes the x-axis value. Next, we apply the rotate function. By name, rotateX rotates the box around the x-axis. For example, setting it to 45 degrees will show the box at a 45-degree angle on the x-axis. If you set it to 60 degrees, you'll see the box rotate further to 60 degrees. If you set it to 120 degrees, the box direction changes, and the text inside the box will also change direction. If you replace rotate X with rotate Y, the box rotates around the Y-axis. For instance, setting it to 45 degrees will show the box rotated at a 45-degree angle on the Y-axis, making it appear vertical. We also use the radius property. For example, setting it to 0.50 radius shows the box's direction, and setting it to 0.75 radius shows the box turned more toward the left. Now, if you change the value type from radius to turn, the effect on the box changes significantly. When using turn, one turn equals 360 degrees. For example, one turn rotates the box 360 degrees, while 0.15 turn rotates it by 54 degrees. If you swap rotate Y with rotate X, the box will appear to rotate flat. Using rotate Z will change the box's direction according to the Z-axis. We also use gradient units, Guardian 400 units, and 100 gradient equals 90 degrees. For example, setting it to 2.5 gradient causes a small shift in the box's position, and increasing it to 5.5 gradient has a greater effect. If you use rotate without specifying the axis, it will default to rotate around the Z-axis. There's another property called scale that is used to increase the size of the box. For example, if you use scale X and set the value to 1.2, it will increase the width of the box. We also increase padding 10 to 30 pixel, because box from top outside of the container. If you replace scale X with scale Y, it will increase the height of the box. If you use scale with a single value, it will increase the size equally in both directions. But if you use two values, for example, setting the first value to 1.5, it will increase the horizontal size width, and the second value will adjust the vertical size height. We also use the skew property, which defines a transformation along the x and y axes. When you use skew x with 45 degrees, it slants the box along the x-axis, changing its direction. If you set it to 60 degrees, the box will slant further in that direction. If you change skew from the x-axis to the y-axis, you'll see the box skew along the y-axis instead. When you only use skew with a single value, it affects the x-axis by default. If you add a second value, like 45 degrees, the first value will skew the x-axis, and the second value will skew the y-axis. We also use the transform value combined. Let's use it with CSS hover. First, remove the transform property from the box. Now create the box class, and then add hover. Inside the hover state, write the transform property and use the translate function to set its value to 25px. When you hover over the box, it will move from left to right. Next, increase the translate value to 100px. Now when you hover, the box moves from left to right, but it's not smooth. To make it smooth, add the transition property to the box class, set it to 3 seconds, and use ease in. Now when you hover, the box moves slowly from left to right. If you set the transition to 0.3 seconds, the box will move faster. Finally, set it to 2 seconds, and when you hover, the box will move smoothly and at a moderate speed from left to right. We start by moving the box both horizontally and vertically. With a translation value of 50 pixels, it moves 100 pixels on the x-axis, left to right, and 50 pixels on the y-axis, top to bottom, when you hover the mouse over it. Next, we add the rotate function and set it to 45 degrees. Now, as you hover over the box, it moves along both axes and rotates on the z-axis. Changing it to rotate x makes the box change direction while it moves from its original position. When applying the scale property with values of 0.5 and 0.6, the box first moves due to the translation, then its direction changes with rotate x, and its size shrinks because the scale is less than 1. However, when we increase the scale to 1.5 and 1.6, the box moves, rotates, and its size grows. Now we use the skew property and set it to 45 degrees. When you hover over the box, it still moves from its original position, but instead of rotating, the size increases and the direction skews. If we set the second skew value to 20 degrees, the box continues moving, its size increases, and the skew adjusts its direction, overriding the rotation. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more.